Leroy, Sassicaia, Smitho Lafitte. Ever tasted these wines? Do you know where to find them?
Well, this episode of Wine Blast is brought to you in association with Ideal Wine, the Aladdin's Cave for wine lovers, delivering straight to your door. Visit idealwine.com for more. That's idealwine.com, or find the link in our show notes.
Hello and welcome to Wine Blast with me, Susie Barry, and my husband and fellow master of wine, Peter Richards. Now, this one's a special one because it's our season 6 finale.
Woo.
But that's not all.
No, indeed. Hello. In this episode, we're going on an intriguing journey of discovery into the beautiful hills of Conegliano Valdobbiadene, north of Venice, to explore why there's Prosecco and Prosecco. And it may involve something of a confession and a learning curve for me. More on that in a bit. Meantime, here's a taster of what's coming up.
I love Prosecco because I define Prosecco a democratic wine. Everyone can have joy from a glass of Prosecco. You don't need to be a wine expert. And every moment of the day is a good moment for a toast with a glass of Prosecco.
Not all the Prosecco is the same. The differences arise from many factors that can be summarized in one word: terroir. Our wine is not an entry-level wine, is not an easy sparkling wine.
An insight into two sides of the same coin there. Producer Sara Meneguz from Sara Meneguz and Diego Tomasi, director of the Conegliano Valdobbiadene Prosecco consortium. We'll be hearing more from them in due course.
Yes, we are talking Prosecco in this programme, but not just any old Prosecco. So thanks to the Consorzio Tutela del Vino Conegliano Valdobbiadene Prosecco for sponsoring this episode. We'll be tasting some Conval wines. I'm just throwing that in there, Conval. It's just a slightly easier way of saying it. Handy abbreviation that spares our blushes from our poor Italian pronunciation. Apologies.
You did pretty well there.
Well, it was all right. I just raced through it, really.
Don't expect the same from me.
Had a glass of the lovely stuff beforehand, and then it's all fine. Anyway, we're doing that towards the end of the show. And, very illuminating these wines are too. No?
Indeed they are. And they're sitting here winking at us now. So let's get started. And I think there was something you wanted to get off your chest, didn't you?
So many things. Where do I start? Shall I limit it to Prosecco?
Prosecco. Let's stick with Prosecco for today.
With TV Prosecco. And yes, I have to confess, I have been something of a Prosecco skeptic in the past. Maybe, I don't know, maybe Prosecco ambivalent would be closer to the truth. Just no massively strong feelings either way. But certainly, Prosecco not my first port of call on the sparkling front, which is why I was intrigued to do this episode, to see if learning a bit more about the subject, tasting in a bit more detail, being allowed to have that time and the wines to try would change my mind. But you are slightly more of a long-term fan, aren't you?
Yeah. I really am.
The
I would happily drink it over many things.
But you kind of visited the region, didn't you? When was it? Back in 2003, wasn't it?
Oh, God, crikey, that sounds a long time ago now, doesn't it? Yep. But I love the place. I'd challenge anyone to visit those beautiful hills and not fall in love with the landscape and the people. But what's really interesting is that the piece I wrote for Wine Magazine after my trip there was very much an educational one, because Prosecco really wasn't very well known at the time. It was still something of an insider's wine, which only experts or regular Venice visitors kind of knew about.
That's so interesting, because you kind of assume Prosecco has been popular for ages,
forever.
Given it's everywhere nowadays, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, literally, the article, an example in the article that I wrote, I said, Prosecco is finally making its mark as the aperitif of the moment. The only problem is that not enough of us know about it, and the only places really pushing it are smart Italian restaurants.
Posh Italian restaurants. Another one of your natural habitats.
You're
absolutely right. It is hard to believe. It's a really interesting bit of context. And that's 20 odd years ago, so not that long. And so much has happened in that time, clearly. So maybe we should back up a bit to set the scene here.
Yeah, good idea. So, these days, we all know Prosecco, right? You know, Kylie's got one, Dolly Parton's got one, Andrea Bocelli's got one, Graham Norton's got one.
Everyone's got one.
And if you look at the figures, 660 million bottles of Prosecco were produced in 2024, which is a record-breaking figure, representing a market value of, deep breath, 3.6 billion euros.
Wow.
This is a category that's been growing seemingly exponentially since the turn of the century, going from 155 million bottles in 2010 to 493 million in 2018, and now 660 million plus today. You know, and Rosé Prosecco, you know, a new category created in 2020, is now selling 60 million bottles.
That's just staggering, isn't it? Absolutely staggering. Firstly, there wasn't a Rosé Prosecco category before, and now that it's come from nowhere in a couple of years
in 5
to
years,
60 million bottles. This is popular stuff, right?
Yeah, it really is.
But this is just one side of Prosecco, you know, variously described as sunshine in a glass, or wines, and I quote, created to slake the thirst of a bubble-hungry but budget-conscious world. It's the other side of Prosecco we're going to explore in this programme, where it all began. You know, the hilly heartland of the Glera grape and the Prosecco DOCG wine. Before the vineyards sprawled down the hills onto the plains of Treviso and beyond, paving the way for these kind of record-breaking figures from the DOC that you're quoting.
Yeah. You know, so our focus here is the hills around the towns of, as you say, Conegliano and Valdobbiadene, which give their name to this special region. This is historic wine country. Conegliano has one of Italy's oldest winemaking schools. You know, it's also striking terrain, known as a hogback or humpback landscape, where the geology has created what look like parallel waves of hills breaking against the sides of the Dolomite Mountains to the north and west. The Glera grape variety has made itself thoroughly at home here, and vineyards literally blanket the hillsides.
So this is where Prosecco, as we know it, began. Historic writings show it was renowned for its fragrance and lively appeal. 18th century poet Aureliano Accanti wrote that he wanted to sacrifice my mouth for that apple aromatic Prosecco. That said, it wasn't actually until the late 19th century that Prosecco became the sparkling wine we know today, after Italian Federico Martinotti developed a method to re-ferment the wine in special pressurized tanks known as autoclaves or autoclaves, rather than in bottle as per champagne. And this technology was later patented by Frenchman Eugène Charmat.
Now, historically, both the grape and the wine were known as Prosecco, and the DOC Conegliano Valdobbiadene was created in 1969. But as the Prosecco category started to boom in popularity in the noughties, Italian authorities wanted to encourage growth as well as protect this valuable product against competitors from elsewhere. So in 2009, they changed the official name of the grape from Prosecco to Glera, and they made Prosecco a much wider DOC, Denominazione di Origine Controllata.
Very nice.
Terrible. This restricted the legal use of the name Prosecco to that region.
Yeah, so 2009 was really a crucial date in the evolution of Prosecco, so it's important just to focus in on it a little bit. On the one hand, the area of the Prosecco DOC was enlarged, as you said, to cover a huge territory spanning 9 different provinces, from Vicenza to Trieste, sparking a boom in plantings and production. It's the largest Italian DOC by far. At the same time, the authorities saw the need to further protect the historic hilly heartland of Conegliano Valdobbiadene, what we're talking about here. So they made that a DOCG, or Denominazione di Origine Controllata e Garantita, the level up from DOC.
So now you had an expansive DOC area covering some 30,000 hectares of generously yielding vines, making some pretty low-cost wine. And at the heart of that was a much smaller DOCG area around the towns of Conegliano and Valdobbiadene, making what was termed Prosecco Superiore. But even that superior DOCG production grew as the category expanded, going from 4,000 hectares in 2000 to 6,000 hectares in 2010 to 8,667 hectares in 2023. So pretty much doubling the production area in 20 years and going from 33 million bottles in 2003 to 62 million bottles in 2010 to 91 million bottles today at a value of 576 million euros. Though growth has deliberately stopped now, as we'll hear.
A lot of numbers there. So a rising tide has lifted all boats. The challenge now, to continue the nautical metaphor, is to differentiate the kind of doughty dinghies from the sophisticated yachts when it comes to the wines themselves. And that's what we're going to be getting into in this programme.
So, time to bring in our first guest. Diego Tomasi is director of the Conegliano Valdobbiadene Prosecco consortium. Before that, he was a researcher for 33 years, and his magnum opus was a huge study on the terroir of Conegliano Valdobbiadene and the local Glera grape variety. Now, this wasn't some airy-fairy impressionistic research. This was data-driven, evidence-led scientific study, using information from more than 100 vineyards, 25 weather stations, countless soil pits, grape analyses, microvinifications and wine tastings, all aimed at understanding the various terroirs of the Conegliano Valdobbiadene region and what they mean for the wines.
Now, this work took years. Diego calls it one of the deepest studies in Italy on the effect of terroir and subzones. It led to the Conval region being divided into 80 different subzones or terroir, and he wrote a book about it. It also helped the region become a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2019. So if anyone knows what makes this region special and has the data to back it up, it's Diego Tomasi. So I asked him, what differentiates the wines of Conegliano Valdobbiadene from basic Prosecco?
Not all the Prosecco is the same. The differences arise from many factors that can be summarized in one word: terroir. We know that terroir means history and tradition, first of all, and we can go back probably 3-4 centuries and already find the Glera variety in our hills. That terroir means geomorphology. Our denomination is only hillside. Then soil, we are very rich in soil, and we studied the effect of each one of them on the quality, on the composition, bench composition. Climate, of course. And then there is another important social effect, the sense of belonging of the people, the sense of community of the people. And so I think that the main differences, yes, are based on the terroir meanings.
And how does that translate to the wine?
Yes. If your terroir match perfectly with the genetic requirement of the variety, and in our case with the Glera variety, you are sure that you can obtain the maximum quality, in our case, in terms of acidity, in terms of aroma composition, in terms of sugar. So if this combination doesn't happen, you cannot have the maximum expression in terms of quality. For a variety like the Glera, that it has not a big aroma power. He is a medium aromatic variety. But on the other hand, fortunately, he has a big range, a huge range of aroma. You go through fruit, fresh fruit and ripe fruit, through flowers, and through many other aroma. And so the presence of the big symphony, aroma symphony, depends of two elements, mainly two elements. The first one is the soil, the second one is the climate. And then, of course, also the capacity of our people, of our vine growers to manage the plant through all the techniques that we can apply in the vineyards.
I love that expression, aromatic symphony. So realistically, what you're saying is you would expect for Conegliano Valdobbiadene and associated areas, maybe a bit more intensity, a bit more elegance, a bit more aromatic spectrum in the wines.
Yes. you are right. Our wine is not an entry-level wine. It's not an easy sparkling wine, but this wine is so famous because the people recognize in this wine the elegance, the finesse, the freshness, but also the differentiation among different sites that we have in our hills, because we have 9 different types of soil, and that each soil make its own effect. But we have also a big range of microclimate, and each microclimate impact on the aroma composition. So yes, our wine is not an easy wine. It's not a wine that you can drink without keeping your attention on the quality.
Is it challenging? Is it difficult for you, therefore, to differentiate yourself and your wines from the most basic styles of Prosecco?
No, it's not difficult because we have so many elements, so many things to tell. I have a lot of data that I collect in my previous work, where there is sometimes there's a positive correlation between the diurnal thermal range and the terpenoids, for example, or there is a negative correlation with some other climate elements and the quantity of norisoprenoids or benzenoids. So this is a scientific demonstration that this variety found in our hills, perfect combination. So speaking about the Glera variety, here in our hills, he found the perfect condition for its quality. This place is perfect for this variety. Then he moved in the flat area. He moved in the Treviso area, in Treviso, and also in other place, just because or due to the market demand, market request. Around the year 2000, the Conegliano Valdobbiadene was able to satisfy all the market demand, and so they started to produce Prosecco also in the flat area, but where the soil are totally different, the climate is totally different, but due to the market phenomenon. This is perfect. This is perfect. You work, you make agriculture just to make money. So it's perfect. But please remember that Conegliano Valdobbiadene is the area where the variety found the right place and where the phenomenon started probably 50 years ago.
Now, Conegliano Valdobbiadene is renowned for its sort of hillside vineyards, often quite steep and very picturesque. How hard is it to work those sites, and what do they mean for the wine?
Yes, more or less the 70% of our vineyard are in steep slope conditions. So it means that you cannot use any machinery, any tractor. You have to do everything by hand. So the same surface is 1 hectare. If you can use the mechanization, it's required more or less 200, 250 hours a year of labor. In our case, it's required 800 and 900 hours of labor a year. And so there is a big cost disadvantage comparing the wine that you obtain in the flat area and the wine that you obtain in heroic viticulture, such as our conditions. And so we are trying to explain to the consumer that you cannot find a bottle of Conegliano Valdobbiadene on the market for 3, 4, or 5 euros because you cannot cover the expenses with a so low price. And so then you have to consider also that we have a lot of a cost to maintain the terraces, to maintain also the landscape. That's another important element of the terroir. And so this is a big trouble also because it's very hard year after year to find labor. And so now we have some labor that comes from Albania, that comes from Afghanistan, but It's not easy, not easy. This is a big problem for the future. The manual labor to manage a so hard viticulture. Just because I told you it's required 900 hours per year per hectare.
And what about the wine making? Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yes. Since 1940, we use the Martinotti methods. Before we used the ancestral method where the second fermentation occurs in bottles, but now we use the Martinotti methods. Martinotti was a researcher that in 1895, he discovered that the second fermentation, you can have the second fermentation in big tank and not in bottles like the classic method, the Champenois method. So what's happened? The fact is that please, you cannot consider the Martinotti methods to obtaining sparkling wine in a less expensive, in an easier way. You use the Martinotti methods, the second fermentation in autoclave, just because these methods give the possibility to conserve the freshness, the aroma composition, and also the finesse. When you drink a Conegliano Valdobbiadene, you don't taste the effect of leaves. You taste the effect of the terroir. You taste the effect of the aroma composition. If you taste a champagne bottles, you taste the effect of the yeast, the bread aroma, and so on. In our case, the Martinotti methods is a method that allow to conserve the freshness and the aroma composition. I told you that unfortunately the Glera variety is not an aromatic variety; it's a medium aromatic variety, and fortunately Martinotti give us the opportunity to conserve the acidity, the freshness, and to conserve also the aroma notes, the elegance, the finesse. So please, Martinotti methods is not a method to obtain in a cheapest way an easy wine. No, it's only a method perfect for this variety that preserve intact all the characteristics that we have in the grape and then in your glass.
And you use the term Martinotti, not Charmat, as some other people do. Can I ask why and what are the differences, if there are any?
No, the problem is that in 1895, the Martinotti, he discovered the Martinotti methods, these methods, and he painted the methods. 15 years later, the Charmat, he painted the autoclaves. And so now, I don't know why all the people, they mention Charmat and not Martinotti. But Martinotti discovered all the methods. Unfortunately, he painted only the methods and not the autoclaves. And Charmat in 1905, 1910, I don't remember exactly, he painted the autoclaves. And so I don't know, he gained also the authority for the name of the method.
And sorry, just to be super clear, Diego, do you mean patented? So he sort of registered commercially?
Yes.
Patented.
Yes.
Okay, all right. So we should talk about Martinotti, not Charmat, really then.
Yes, we try in Italy to explain the Martinotti as the paternity. You can say the paternity.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Very important. To move on to more commercial realities, Diego, what are the trends you're seeing, both in terms of production, but also sales when it comes to Conegliano Valdobbiadene?
Since 2016, we have reached a threshold of stability in our number of bottles. We are around 90 million of bottles a year. And we cannot exceed this number, this quantity of bottles, because the plantation of new vineyard is banned. Since 2019, when we received the UNESCO heritage, we banned the possibility to have a new vineyard. So probably our maximum level of bottles is around 100 millions. Now we have 90 millions of bottles.
And in Prosecco more broadly, I know this extends beyond your remit, but the Prosecco story more broadly, over the last 20, 30, 40 years. You hinted at it earlier. Could you just give us a very, very brief recap on the success story that Prosecco has been?
Yes, I think that the sex pool of the Prosecco started around 1985. What's happened? The Prosecco teach a new system to drink wine. Not anymore a very alcoholic wine, a very rich wine, a very woody wines. And so the Prosecco was a new style of wine, very fresh, with very fruity. You can drink wine not only one times a day, but more along all the day. Is it the same phenomenon that happens probably only one time in 1 century that we had with the kiwi fruit. The kiwi fruit in 1970 in Italy, no one knows that the kiwi fruit. And in 5 years, Italy becomes the first productive country all over the world of kiwi, because kiwi was a very nice fruit in terms of aroma, rich in vitamin C, not so expensive, very healthy. And so it was a big phenomenon, the kiwi in Italy, but also in the other part of Europe. It's the same for the Prosecco. The people, the consumer, they are waiting for a new wine, a new style of wine. And yes, and so the Prosecco started in 1980, 1985 to go abroad from Veneto area. So I think that the Conegliano Valdobbiadene Prosecco has been the right wine in the right moment, like kiwi, to explain. And so now we are selling the 40% of our production is go abroad, and more or less 60 million of bottles remain in Italy, mostly in north part of Italy. But anyway, we are also trying to confirm that until 20 years ago, the most used version was the extra dry. Extra dry means a very round, very complex, but mostly a wine that was perfect for the celebration. Now, for sure, the Prosecco wine in its extra brut and in brut version pairs well with the food throughout the meal. And there is another element that make our wine now more gastronomic. We are discovering that, I don't know why, if it depends of the climate change, if it depends of the winemaking techniques or wine management techniques, but we have discovered a longevity of our wines. You remember, probably 10 years ago, everyone suggested to drink the Prosecco wine, the Conegliano Prosecco wine, just in a span of ex maximum 1 year or 15 months. Now we are sure that in those periods you can taste the young version of the wine, but if you wait 2 or 3 years, you can taste the adult wine with a new aroma composition, with a new taste, a new palate. And so in my masterclass that I lead probably 1 time a week, now I am also explaining the longevity of the Conegliano Valdobbiadene. You cannot wait 10 years, but you can wait for sure 2, 3 years, or also 4 years before to taste this wine. And you discover another expression of the Conegliano Valdobbiadene, the same freshness, the same elegance, but there are something new that we are discovering now in terms of aroma composition.
So patience has its rewards when it comes to
correct, patience.
Conegliano Valdobbiadene.
A patient consumer.
Diego, thank you very much indeed.
Okay, thank you.
So Prosecco as the right wine in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, a new style of wine and drinking. Interesting.
Yeah.
And I did like his comparison with kiwi fruit. That, again, really interesting.
Yeah. I loved what he said about the Martinotti method. So I think we should spend just a tiny bit of time on this. Just to recap, the classic or traditional champagne method is where a base wine is put into a bottle with sugar and yeast, sealed, and aged. The yeast ferment the sugar, producing carbon dioxide, hence the fizz. But more importantly, the dead yeast cells, the lees, then infuse the wine over time with that bready, sort of yeasty character.
And Diego talked about bready characters from the classic method,
exactly,
didn't he?
Classic. But then you've got the Martinotti method, which is where the wine is re-fermented in tanks rather than bottles for the fizz. Two important things to note here. Firstly, names. We're arguably unfairly calling it the Charmat method, which is possibly the more common way of saying it, isn't it? But Frenchman Eugène Charmat was just the guy who improved and patented the tanks, when it was the Italian Federico Martinotti who actually invented the whole thing. And then secondly, more importantly, this tank method is often dismissed as a way of making wine sparkling in a cheap, easy way, which is what Diego was getting at. But, Diego stresses it's actually the best method for retaining the freshness and elegance and finesse of these top Conval wines, and suits them much better than any other method.
You're right. I mean, sometimes there's a bit of snobbery about this, assuming the classic champagne method is best. Yes. But actually, if this Martinotti method suits these grapes and wine styles, then it's appropriate and valid, and no one should look down their noses on it.
I think that's a really, really important point, absolutely. He also added, it's not an easy method. If you even make a small mistake, you can lose an entire tank. So, you need to be skilled in using it. And talking of skills, he also mentioned the phrase heroic viticulture. I didn't want that to get lost because he sort of just mentioned it in passing. But this is a term in the region for farming vines on the steepest hillsides, and they do get incredibly backbreakingly steep, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, and some of the most special vineyard areas have a separate designation, Rive. There are 43 of them within the wider Conegliano Valdobbiadene region, and we'll talk about that a bit more when we taste. But yeah, I mean, it's all about striving to achieve what Diego said, maximum expression from the Glera grape, and that aroma symphony. It's such an evocative term. And of course, all very different from the flat country of DOC Prosecco.
Okay, so on that note, I think we should have a pause before hearing from grower Sara Meneguz and delivering our verdict on some Proseccos with a difference. By way of brief summary so far, Conegliano Valdobbiadene is the original heartland of Prosecco, a beautiful UNESCO-certified landscape of rolling, vineyard-clad hills where viticulture can be heroic and Prosecco reaches its maximum expression. The Martinotti method, as we should call it, is perfectly engineered to maximize fragrance, freshness, and finesse. And whisper it, but apparently we should be aging some of our Conval wines too.
If only we were more patient people. Okay, so I think we should bring in Sara Meneguz. Yeah. So Sara runs Sara Meneguz. Her family have been making wine in the region since around 1750, but she's the first woman in charge, something she says she feels proud about, as well as feeling the weight of history on her shoulders. Her operation is in the hamlet of Corbanese in the Tarso area of the DOCG Conegliano Valdobbiadene. She calls it a very, very special place for wine.
And that's partly because her vineyards sit around and on top of a hill, the highest altitude being around 325 metres above sea level. So she has a range of exposures and sites to blend her wines from, but all with good freshness and aromatic intensity. Her clay soils are rich in marine deposits that give weight and structure to the wine. So I asked her how things have changed since she started out.
I started on my own 20 years ago. At that time, I received the old vineyards of my father. At that time, the most part of my vines were 80, 90 years old. Everything, especially for the administration part of the company, was very simple. In these 20 years, everything is so complicated. The Italian rules are very strict, very complicated. I am discovering the global warming, and every year is a new experience for me. When I started 20 years ago, after 4 or 5 harvest time, I was so happy to know many things about harvest time, about winemaking process. And then year by year, I discovered that there is no rule in nature. And every harvest is a discovery, a challenge. And so every year I start again.
And how has your production changed and evolved over the years?
Following the weather changing. Every year is a challenge for me. I pay a lot of attention to control the evolution of my vineyard, the level of water, and so every year is different. And another important thing is that the weather changing makes different the harvest time. So if 20 years ago I started the harvest time the third weeks of September, sometimes now I start at the end of August to preserve the right acidity, the natural acidity of the grape. That is very, very important for sparkling wines.
So do you think moving forward, your biggest challenge is going to be preservation, retention of acidity in the wines in an era of global warming?
Yes, I need to pay more attention. This is the sense of this transformation. I have to control everything every day during the winter time and adapt my agriculture techniques to this transformation.
Tell us a bit about the grape varieties you use and why you use them.
For the most part, I use Glera grape, of course. I think that the principal identity of Glera grape is the elegance of the wine that you make. And the diffusion of Glera grape for me is the reason of this diffusion is also that the Glera plant is very strong and it has a big ability to adapt to different conditions, more than other varieties like Verdiso or local varieties, Pereira, Bosquera. And so a Glera plant is a very, very strong and generous because it gives a lot of bunch of grapes each year. Of course, the wine is a elegant wine, light, simple, but in the sense of easy to drink. And so it gives us a joy in a simple way, in direct way. And this is this simplicity, I always say, is the force of Prosecco wine and Glera grape. Elegance, simplicity, and joy and lightness.
So strength in simplicity and joy. I love that.
Yeah, I love Prosecco because I define Prosecco a democratic wine. Everyone can have joy from a glass of Prosecco. You don't need to be a wine expert. And every moment of the day is a good moment for a toast with a glass of Prosecco. And the bubbles inside are joy or life.
I love that. That's great advice for life. Sara, what about the winemaking? Tell me about the method you use and how it can confer quality.
I use Martinotti method. I love to say that the method is Martinotti because, of course, Charmat has had the good idea to register the name, the method, but the idea was from an Italian man, and I am proud of this. And I love Martinotti method because I think that to use a Martinotti method is like to make a Polaroid of the bunch of grape. I stop the freshness of the bunch of grape with this method. I preserve the fragrance, the young aromas, the freshness of the bunch of grape. It's like a Polaroid, the exactly moment when the grape is perfect. And I preserve that moment and I serve you that moment in the glass when I give you my wine.
I love that. So that the method is almost like a time capsule. It captures a moment in time of the harvest, all that freshness and fragrance, and delivers that into the glass.
Yes, I think that this is the big difference between Martinotti method and the classic method. In classic method, time as a rule transform the wine in a good way. I love a classic method. Of course, I love champagne too, but time is another ingredient of the wine in classic method. In Martinotti method, we privilege freshness.
And how would you differentiate for if someone comes to you and says, look, Sara, explain to me, I've got a bottle of Prosecco DOC here and I've got a bottle of Conegliano Valdobbiadene. What's the difference? How would you describe that difference?
The difference is one word, resilience. In a glass of DOCG wine, there is, you drink a story of resilience. My grandfather, my father, my grandfather, all my relatives, they were very strong to resist in this area, even in years when wine was not so a big business. So to stay here, to work hard without all the technologies that we have now, was a big sign of resilience and of love for this place.
So a story of love and resilience.
Absolutely. And this value is in the DOCG, because to stay here in steep places, it's hard. It's complicated, very complicated.
And I know there's lots of diversity of styles within Conegliano Valdobbiadene, but is there a way you can differentiate the two in terms of taste as well?
The taste is different totally. The body is bigger in the DOCG. When I speak about the DOCG wine, Prosecco, I want to transfer the awareness of what there is in behind the glass of this wine. And the body of the wine is a good sign of this identity. Because you can taste in the glass of DOCG the salt from the soil, that kind of soil, that clay, this heavy soil, and this origin from sea, and the aromas are more rich, but immediately the taste and the body is bigger.
Sara, what are the main challenges that you face?
Weather challenging. Nature is changing. The most hard thing for me is the unpredictability of the weather. So really every morning I discover something new. The unpredictability of the weather is the bigger problem of this age.
How important was the recognition from UNESCO?
First of all, 6 years ago, when I realized this beautiful notice, I thought to my family, to all the people that worked hard to preserve all this area. And that award is a prize to all them. I am a privileged woman because I received all this from the past. And now I have the responsibility to protect all and to preserve all. But UNESCO heritage was a big sign, a big thank to people of the past. And for tourism, it's a big opportunity. It is a more reason why to come here. And but I think, and sorry to UNESCO, I think that Prosecco is the real attraction. Wine is belongs to human health. Is the first drink that humanity created, and so I think that this is a deep attraction.
What does the future hold for your wines and for the region more widely?
Future, I am positive because, like I was telling you, Prosecco has a very, very old story. It belongs to humanity, and it had a past, and it will have a future, by sure.
A bright future. Sara, thank you very much indeed.
To you. Thank you, Peter. Good life and good wine.
I love her attitude towards life and wine and bubbles. Bubbles as joy,
Yes.
and Prosecco is the most democratic of wines.
Yeah, she's got a great turn of phrase, doesn't she? The way she described the Martinotti method as like taking a Polaroid at the moment of harvest, a way of preserving and then delivering all that freshness and immediacy and fragrance in your glass. I think that captures the method perfectly, doesn't it?
She also mentioned, didn't she, climate change as a key challenge.
Yes, she did. She's doing things like working with cover crops, for example, to build up the porosity and water holding capacity of the soil to help it cope with the increased intensity of the rains. Diego also touched on this when I spoke with him. One of his follow-up studies was on climate change in the region, and he also pointed to soils being key here. He said that soils that are better at managing water, in those soils, the effects of climate change on the wine aren't so evident. But where you get hydric stress, you can lose acidity in the grapes and wines. And as Sara said, acidity is key when you're making sparkling wine. So,
okay, so this talk of acidity in wine, it's making me thirsty. Should we get tasting?
Come on. Yes.
So first up, I've got the snappily named Santa Margherita Valdobbiadene Prosecco Superiore Rive di Refrontolo Extra Brut 2022.
Well done. You can take a sip now. There's a reward.
So I need a drink. Yeah. So the Rive are the special sites. Yeah. They always come with a vintage, and this one's 3 years old now. And it's lovely. So vindicating Diego's point about these wines having the capacity to mature. And
100%.
It's so delicate and graceful. Lovely floral stone fruit perfume, wonderful freshness and balance on the palate with hints of dried herbs. It manages to be both gentle and unassuming, but also insistent and intriguing.
And I think you've hit the nail on the head there. And this is sort of my, Damascene moment, if you like. I guess I'm more familiar, as I said at the beginning, with the language and stylistic context of say, champagne or English fizz. But with these really fine Proseccos, you kind of have to come at it with a totally different mindset where it's all about the subtlety and fragrance and gentle delicacy. Use the word gentle. I think that's absolutely spot on. Gentle, sort of the nuance of the thing. If this were music, it would be sort of piano and allegro rather than forte or staccato. And there's validity and beauty in that softer register too.
Did you have a wine you were supposed to be talking about rather than music dynamics?
Sorry, I thought your expression there was yes. Anyway, yes, absolutely. I've got this wine here. It's the DOCG Valdobbiadene Prosecco Superiore Rive di Santo Stefano Extra Brut 2022. Now, this Rive is right next to the fabled hill of Cartizze, which is considered to be one of the finest subzones in Conval. It has more effusive aromatics, I think. It's pear and fresh almonds just leap out of the glass. There's also white flowers, some herbs, apple rind, even a bit of green asparagus in there as well. It's so fragrant and all about freshness. Then on the palate, it has a bit more intensity and structure. And I think we tried some prosciutto with it. It worked really well, didn't it? So, it's definitely a drier style, which you do notice. Perhaps we should say something about that briefly.
Yeah, so good point, yeah. Okay. So both these wines are extra brut. With Prosecco, you get a clue to the style or the sweetness of the wine from the label. Now, Diego touched on this, but historically, most Prosecco was extra dry, which actually means off dry. So we're talking 12 to 17 grams per litre of residual sugar in the wine.
It's a fair amount,
Sort of a succulent style. But increasingly, Prosecco, especially top Prosecco, like the Conval stuff, is going drier. So Brut is 0 to 12 grams per litre of residual sugar, Extra Brut is 0 to 6 grams per litre, and Brut Nature is 0 to 3 grams per litre. So pretty dry styles.
And the ones we've just tried are both Extra Brut, right? So that's like 0 to 6.
That's 0 to 6.
So what would you say about the trend for Prosecco to go drier?
Oof, honestly?
Yeah, come on. I think it's interesting.
I've got mixed feelings. I get that the general trend around the world at the moment is for sparkling wine to go drier. So I understand why they're doing it in Prosecco, especially for fine Prosecco, where it's all about more inherent quality along with fragrance and delicacy. But equally, I think there's something magical about the succulence and slightly off-dry richness, if you like, you get with extra dry, or even with the richer brut styles. I think it suits the nature of Prosecco so well. And I think it would be a shame to lose that in the rush to join, as it were, the ever drier trend towards extra brut or brut nature. There are exceptions, of course. There always are, aren't there? Yeah. But in general, I would urge caution in that regard.
Interesting. I think that's a fair point. What about your next wine?
Okay, so it's the San Filletto Conegliano Valdobbiadene Prosecco Superiore DOCG Brut.
So it's brut.
This is brut. This is brut. So really pale, like all the wines. It's got a lovely floral sort of fresh herb aroma, and there's some red apple rind there as well. I mean, it is quite dry, but with good weight and persistence. I would say really impressive, this one.
Absolutely. And the last one we've got is the Bortolomiol Jus, I think that's the name, Naturae Valdobbiadene Prosecco Superiore DOCG Brut Millesimato 2022. Again, I really like this. It's perhaps the most characterful and expressive wine here. Also a little bit aged. It's got lovely honeyed peach and pear aromas. Bit floral, but also very yeasty, isn't it? It's quite complex and vinous. Really good weight on the palate, complex, savoury. And yeah, you do get this sort of creamy, yeasty character in both the texture and the flavour. A bit different.
It is a bit different. It is a bit different. It is the most expensive, perhaps we should mention price, most expensive of the bunch, but it's also organic and it looks really cool. It's a bit difficult finding prices, but most of these wines seem to be around £12 to £18, and that particular one is north of 20, so a bit pricier.
Yeah, I mean, price is interesting, isn't it? Because both Diego and Sara touched on this. These aren't the cheapest wines to make, these Conval ones, as opposed to some of the more basic Prosecco, given it, obviously it can take 4 times the man hours to work these vineyards, as they explained. I mean, yields can still be pretty high, even in Conval. I think that's something that maybe needs to be looked at, but it does depend entirely on the grower, of course. That and you get the sense these wines were not made with high yielding vines, because you get wonderful character, don't you here? So all that cost and history means these will never be the cheapest wines. Really important to say that, Diego said it, but equally, they're far from being the most expensive either, are they?
Absolutely,
If you like the style.
And you do get that sense of what Diego and Sara were talking about, the perfume, the roundness, the persistence in the DOCG wines that wouldn't be there in the more basic styles.
Yeah, so a quick reminder here, if you're looking for quality in Prosecco, if you're looking for your fine yachts rather than the doughty dinghies, as you said earlier, the label can help. A quick tip is to look for the letters DOCG on the label rather than just DOC. The words Conegliano or Valdobbiadene or Superiore also count for a lot. You can have 1, 2 or all 3 of those on the label. If they are site-specific, Conegliano wines tend to be richer than Valdobbiadene wines, which are more delicate. You might also see names like Rive, Azzolo or Cartize, all of which indicate quality sites and are well worth trying if you can.
Yeah, and talking labels, we should mention Spumante is the most common and best form of Prosecco. It's fully sparkling. There's also Frizzante, which is semi-sparkling, and even Tranquillo or still.
So I think we should wrap things up there. By way of closing summary, there's so much more to Prosecco than just Prosecco. The wines from the UNESCO-endorsed hilly heartlands of Conegliano Valdobbiadene are where the Prosecco story began and where the most expressive and refined wines are to be found. These are wines of great fragrance and delicacy, but also thoroughly democratic wines which bring joy and don't require a diploma to appreciate. And they're not the exclusive domain of smart Italian restaurants anymore.
Amen to that. Thanks to our interviewees, Diego Tomasi and Sara Meneguz. Thank you also to the Consorzio Tutela del Vino Conegliano Valdobbiadene Prosecco for sponsoring this episode. We hope you've enjoyed listening as much as we've enjoyed making it, and as much as I've enjoyed witnessing my husband change his mind. This episode marks the end of season 6, but we will come roaring back very soon with season 7, and we have some serious treats in store for you. So, until next time, cheers.
Thank you for listening right to the end of the programme. You deserve some sort of medal or maybe a glass of fine wine, whatever. Either way, if you're a regular Wine Blast listener, you'll know we do occasional sponsorships, both episodic and headline. You might not have thought of this, but if you're involved with a company, brand or region who could benefit from exposure to a top-notch global community of wine lovers, get in touch.
Wine Blast goes out to 200 countries and thousands of listeners. It's won multiple awards and is regularly one of the highest ranking drinks shows in global charts, with a knack of making national and international headlines, despite being a totally independent production made with a lot of passion and hard graft. If you'd like to support the show and take your message to an ever-growing global audience, get in touch by emailing contact@susieandpeter.com. That address is also on our website show notes, or you can find us on social media.